It is the message that in our day, the gospel has been restored for the blessing of all who will listen and obey.
Mormonism's most embarrassing quotations. Cadillacs for Negroes. I would be willing to let every Negro drive a Cadillac if they could afford it. Don't masturbate. It may be necessary to tie a hand to the bed frame with a tie in order that the habit of masturbating in a semi-sleep condition can be broken. This can also be accomplished by wearing several layers of clothing. Moon men. Moon men dress like Quakers and must have the true gospel revealed to them by missionaries from the earth. Blacks are a different species. Had I anything to do with the Negro, I would confine them by strict law to their own species. Brigham's plural wife limit. Brother Cannon remarked that people wondered how many wives and children I had. He may inform them that I shall have wives and children by the million, and glory and riches and power and dominion. The planet Kolob. God lives on a planet called Kolob. Plural wives limit. I found about 400 of my female kindred who were never married. I asked President Brigham Young what I should do with them. He said for me to have them sealed or married to me unless there were more than 999 of them. Mutual masturbation. Masturbation leads to grievous sin, even to that sin against nature, homosexuality. For done in private, it evolves often into mutual masturbation, practiced with another person of the same sex, and thence into total homosexuality. Christ was a polygamist. It will be seen that the great Messiah, who was the founder of the Christian religion, was a polygamist. Men can become gods. To this end, God created man to live in mortality and endowed him with the potential to perpetuate the race, to subdue the earth, to perfect himself, and to become as God, omniscient and omnipotent. Oral sex is a sin. Talking about husband and wife relationships, the First Presidency has interpreted oral sex as constituting an unnatural, impure, or
color of skin. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court, Founders Board of Education, desegregated all our public schools. In 1964, civil rights laws giving full equality to black Americans. And yet it wasn't until 1978 that the Mormon Church decided to allow blacks to participate fully. Here's the headlines in the papers in June of '78. Mormon Church dissolved black bias. Citing new revelation from God, the president of the Mormon Church decreed for the first time black males could fully participate in church rites. You were 31 years old, and your church was excluding blacks from full participation. Didn't you think, what am I doing part of an organization that is viewed by many as a racist organization?
I'm very proud of my faith and the faith of my fathers, and I certainly believe that it is a faith, well, it's true, and I love my faith, and I'm not going to distance myself in any way.
Brigham Young said that race mixing should be punishable by death.
Right.
Death to those who intermarry. Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, black people, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. Men are in charge. The Lord has assigned to men the chief responsibility for the governing and presiding over the affairs of the church and the family. Slavery is okay, but we have no right to interfere with slaves, contrary to the mind and will of their masters. In fact, it would be much better and more prudent not to preach at all to the slaves until after their masters are converted, and then teach the masters to use them with kindness, remembering that they are accountable to God, and the servants are bound to serve their masters with singleness of heart, without murmuring. Civil rights activists are communists. The civil rights movement in the South has been fomented almost entirely by the communists. The pending civil rights legislation is, I am convinced, about 10% civil rights and 90% a further extension of the socialistic federal controls. It is part of the pattern for the communist takeover of America. No thinking required. When our leaders speak, the thinking has been done. Jesus and the devil are brothers. There is a devil, he and the fallen angels who followed him are spirit children of the Father God. As Christ is the firstborn of the Father in the Spirit, so Lucifer is a son of the morning, one of those born in the morning of pre-existence. He is a spirit man, a personage, an entity, comparable in form and appearance to any of the spirit children of the eternal Father. God was a man. God himself was once as we are now, and is an exalted man, and sits enthroned in judgment.
There are some for whom these commitments are not enough. They would prefer it if I would simply distance myself from my religion, say that it's more a tradition than my personal conviction, or disavow one or another of its precepts. That I will not do. I believe in my Mormon faith, and I endeavor to live by it. My faith is the faith of my fathers. I will be true to them and to my beliefs. Some believe that such a confession of my faith will sink my candidacy. If they're right, so be it.
Well, Mormonism has never been considered a part of mainstream Christianity. Mormonism is not a problem to Mormons, and the only problem is trying to confuse it with Christianity. Mormonism came 1,800 years after Jesus Christ, and the church was established. It has its own human founder, Joseph Smith. It has its own set of doctrines. It has its own book of Revelation, the Book of Mormon. And when I talked about Mormonism being a cult, I was talking about a theological cult. And those attributes I just mentioned qualified as a theological cult. I think Mormons are good people, they are moral people, but Mormonism is not.
I'm telling you, the more people find out, people don't know about Mormonism. When they find out, they will be amazed at how weird it really is. It's even weird by the standards of other religions, and we know that they're weird. But they believe in some stuff that is demonstrably, you can prove that it's not true. I mean, you can't prove about Jesus, it was 2,000 years ago, but Joseph Smith, the prophet of Mormonism, lived less than 2 centuries ago. And he was, a con man. And he did preach some really weird stuff that you can prove is not true, like the Mormons believe that the Indians, the American Indians, are a lost tribe of Israel. Well, DNA testing shows that is not true.
I believe that every faith I've encountered draws its adherents closer to God. And in every faith I've come to know, there are features I wish were my own. I love the profound ceremony of the Catholic Mass, the approachability of God in the prayers of the evangelicals, the tenderness of spirit among the Pentecostals, the confident independence of the Lutherans, the ancient traditions of the Jews, unchanged through the ages, and the commitment to frequent prayer of the Muslims. As I travel across the country and see our towns and cities, I'm always moved by the many houses of worship with their steeples all pointing to heaven, reminding us of the source of life's blessings. It's important to recognize that while differences in theology exist between the churches in America, we share a common creed of moral convictions, and where the affairs of our nation are concerned, it's usually a sound rule to focus on the latter, on the great moral principles that urge us all on a common course. Whether it was the cause of abolition, or civil rights, or the right to life itself, no movement of conscience can succeed in America that cannot speak to the convictions of religious people.
This is the faith of my fathers. And you and none of these commentators who like this speech realize that the faith of his father is a racist faith. As of 1978, it was an officially racist faith. And for political convenience, in 1978, it switched. And it said, okay, black people can be in this church. He believes, if he believes the faith of his fathers, that black people are black because in heaven they turned away from God. In this demented Scientology-like notion of what was going on in heaven before the creation.
Mitt's been called upon to talk about his faith nearly as much as I have about mine. I keep hearing about, Mitt's faith. I'm the one that they always ask the religious questions to on the debates. I'm the one that in every interview somebody wants to say, okay, let's talk about your belief then. And then we go off on all the spiritual questions, which is fine.
What is marriage?
Marriage is a man and a woman. That's what it is historically. That's what it is legally. If we change the definition to accommodate a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, then why can't we accommodate a man and two women, or a women and three men?
You could be black and be a deacon or an elder in a woman church. Or elder, simply, you couldn't be very well at all. It's an officially racist organisation. Senator Byrds had to answer questions about that. He was a Klansman in his youth. Mitt Romney was a grown man, kind of said that. He should be asked, what was it like being a member of an officially racist organisation? In what way are you glad that's changed? Should we are glad? Stop saying that we're not allowed to ask these questions and it's un-American to ask. The Mormons had to be told they were un-American, where they practiced polygamy and weren't allowed to have Utah as a state union until they changed on that. It's blowing smoke to us, told us that he thinks the Garden of Eden. It used to be in Missouri, and it will be again after Jesus of Nazareth returns and splits the Mount of Olives in two. I think that's a crackpot belief. It doesn't have any dangerous implications. The critical thing is the Mormon Church was an officially racist organization while he was an adult. That's very important.
You suggested that Mormons are, the toss-up is whether, yes. The Mormon religion is so obviously fake, founded by a transparent charlatan in the 19th century, Joseph Smith. Nothing could be more obvious than that man was a fake and a charlatan and a liar. And yet now we have a presidential candidate who is prepared to say that he believes in this mountebank, who wrote a bogus book, the Book of Mormon, although he was writing in the 19th century, chose to write it in 17th century English. Why don't people see through that? I do
not define my candidacy by my religion. A person should not be elected because of his faith, nor should he be rejected because of his faith. Let me assure you that no authorities of my church, or of any other church for that matter, will ever exert influence on presidential decisions. Their authority is theirs within the province of church affairs, and it ends with the affairs of the nation begin. As governor, I tried to do the right as best I knew it, serving the law and answering to the Constitution. I did not confuse the particular teachings of my church with the obligations of the office and of the Constitution. And of course, I would not do so as president. I will put no doctrine of any church above the plain duties of the office and the sovereign authority of the law.